All right. All good then?
1 second. Sorry. Now it's me. Alright, I'm good.
Alright, just checking one last time. Sweet. Advantage one is aging. Japan's massively increased pro-immigrant policies after COVID, but they're not sufficient to compensate for emerging labor pressures around. To reach Japan to open borders and access to the entry cover without rapid use of borders and blood numerous reforms debate. Chip there's a little after Japan incorporated relying on workers and interest being attracted to the also same incentivize on negotiation business advantage which or change from nature careers. A foreign labor some of the experience of Japan and demographic crisis will document the country will achieve people maintain government failure dropped an expansive national immigration policy to deters foreign labor by preserving perceived xenophobia around towards the principle and adopting formalized health and national laws on being like the new center of opportunities question about Japan's attractions assassination reforms of the constitution conventional affirmative change that process demand workers and ability to and represent new for change in the core policy direction. Open borders solved by offsetting labor market pressures and each one immigration to get up to some concentration as aging leader finding out with immigrants central purposes using as opera reducing increase in testing to cover the spending immigration related to smaller increases in pension as well. Ratio of models assuming immigrants permanently settle ways and not the current immigration regulations towards the language extending state the government maintain restriction policies towards low skill migrants. The majority of workers in Japan. Japan has taken preliminary steps towards open borders, but current migration applies preferential treatment based on employment type and origin. Full globalization is key to shaping public attitudes around migrants. Yoshimura. Japan remains the demographic consider politics, immigration, psychological relations, we can wait aging fast effective events and viral determinants and conceptual spoken borders, migrants, the first of the laws and only as powerful society then force changes. Was never added immigrants, how dependent on occupation, local office, tradition, lack of support, because the gap between good and bad forms. Aging crisis crash the US-Japan lines that creates deterrence, breakdown, scuba, 21 lots of it, the ECS, and challenges. Arguing families, essential world, military planning, is critical, essential more than any other uses you can live in economies of an issue, trying to be structure, measurement, and demographic problem because of all how much Japan you can lose retail and reduce the power of classes and affect the Japan is only big elephants, immigration, last algorithms, change measures, or many builder. You may not be population the mere perception of lines decline triggers out of cell probing extinction Mitchell. Sending shutter Russian or unneeded sort of position of low position hash American nature probing you the states of Washington game has radiating effects of reliability of reputation of loss of region at the time of localization not confound Kiihnl where the US any set of hesitation was not effective except for Ukraine EU Japan Australia Libya Philippines in Taiwan Israel listed responses powers of the Saga targeted multiple audiences and 30 lived there among the Japan has an inherent lastly that caused nuclear war in Asia Japan 19 years of Japan taking offensive measure distance with the trophies for about makes always often such a just critical the laws merging it's such a crisis for the land Japan Russia could have destabilizing consequences between China and Japan the alliance to mitigate the secret level of national Japan the longer China makes hostile military and EC is also the South American war having collapse and proliferation extinction cancer sending the alliance out in nuclear primacy would ever change the end of China the event of nuclear Japan was a nuclear war to greater than the current Russian US relations becomes globalized in addition to Russian calculations with Finnish and suspicion pull up now is a unique threat and cause extinction economy 20% illicit leaders reduce the isolation resident never increase the opportunity for their parties and stable leaders launching us engagement lack of contract all this free range of goals including revenge paying up and future public benefit future leadership engagement of overall leaders and ensure even the most limited technically as the nation new war and extinction preemption is faster than the plan and acquisition free for video open acquisition for balancing benefit they can offer to over the interval leading system preemptive check because the selection of chance and diets are penetrated Japan and inclusive of Japan and East Asia might be especially prone to instability and also war from accidents and terror McKinsey 20 consequences of public my allies the more reduced more likely weapon is a little action as a share over McKinsey shipping one yes here's others incentive to same thus the plan just otherwise open Japanese borders for human migration advantage choose leadership Japan sets precedent for global migratory governments upside self openness and integration that incentivizes cooperation on collective goods but downsides costs liberal cooperative order health film 17 interdependence complex social warfare regulations when integrating governments is Japan always be head of the group of the liberal order looks of internationalization of illustrated by policies from cultural opportunity and relations to participate in regulation trading and students alliances with orientation Japan as part of the liberal order and emerging regulation Japan and leisure of marine fully migration the fundamental issues of the order as states become open regulation increasingly destabilizing the system which had to give world leisure openness social and powerful liberals and civil southern to domestic backlash against immigration rights respectful Japan being leader of migration integration is effectively messaging shallow opposition and weak national scale and 20% over 50% of the nation immigration for Japan to raise to be running for backlash with reputation logic for immigration most of the church and Mr. Armor very deep Japan is not saying complex backlash and race and over these liberal leaders now much controversy I mean choosing this basis for immigration and arguments the liberal order is well sustainable but Japan is key counter to warning Christians of the West and global order the big conditions of security and global living system and shadow levels of the over classes over family Japan is the last security Japan is the only church and offering nations that are no Pacific Asia to operate Japan can go with the Chinese challenge Western levels as China in economic terms the United military economic culture is bigger than China the West to show from it to access one the liberal cooperative order solves exchange for 18 but often on the other war region new global competition checking in everybody here is experiencing animal class here to the time plus all this solutions to destruction caused by intercurrents make lots of ways that immigration really stabilizing our watches over human mechanics operation the movement is liberalism a strong liberal order can integrate China current aggression reflects regional balancing not revenge is a lot of pretty good with China as a relationship to see the China given domination of balancing distribution parties and ability or incentive to turn into domination of economic rights and relations to integrate liberal order increase in national power balancing with the new polarity has to integrate itself into even working on Washington's normative devices reduce and balancing the policies for office and political politically global governance institutions and national organization new organization counterbalances is looking center for plan looks like different strategically challenging against existential competition definitely not not but full return concept that return spheres of influence. Actually skip that card. Only clear and ambiguous open border solve anything less loose. Countless vectors for level implementation, complete each one returns after spheres of level, something else, change governance, evolution, rotation, gender, roles, and consistency level. Stated like the generation, tremendous, level, 6, embrace open around ambiguous adventure with a change of razor pen. This is the level of sense of irrigation, level, implementation, that has been early consistency, periods of examples, and contradictory. Nature of the same institutional has this policy in different directions. New core classic extinction, legislation, nuclear conflict, civil migration, temperature, investigation, for that is specific, also at least, miles of glass, I want to also represent the US, energy, also it was a simple individual, nuclear conflict, relationship, revolution, super lower, which you represent a solid relationship with weather, low freezing program for somebody specific nature, possible half population, line to translate global lens, monster, really system, rejection, 900% every moon, to I something start, lastly, framing fiat is valuable regardless of the plan's likelihood of occurring. It creates advocates that can synthesize and engage complex legal institutions, and three countervailing political institutions, persons, and also teachers of politics, language, change, protocol, average being possible, institution, critical social institutions, and things of protocols, and have problem origin, international origin, and policy relevance, and problems, and the system, policy, analysis, and also they can argue the term, and also recognize alternative in the middle of the policy, analysis, and advanced public relationship, relationship, social policy, just experience, and play critical roles in reusability, interpretability, for topic, for people, or pertinent knowledge analysis of its policy, use utilitarian impact calculates its impartial specific to public actions, and results infinite rigor, such as science, all value, green fish, usual, much as result, usual, housing, value, combination, usual, issues with its impartial, such as mayors, interests, as evil, events, evidence, answer, is happening to determine anything, is about you, knowledge, being content, the quality of conscious experience, and pleasure, independence, and consent, and result, of its experience, over the experiencing, maximizing happiness.
Good.
Yeah.
The integration argument, it seems that the affirmative creates a liberal order of hard power. How does integration happen?
Hard power. Sorry, the F is not about hard power. It's rather about creating liberal norms and cooperation between states. The integration argument, if you're referring to the Yellen evidence, is just saying that migrants empirically have been successfully integrated into Japanese society because the nationalists...
No, I'm talking about the Chinese.
The Chinese integration, yeah. So our argument is that in the status quo, China is not a revisionist power, but rather an opportunistic power. That means China is looking... If the US sort of retracts from the order, China would take opportunities, but it is not inherently seeking a global lead. Our argument is that revitalizing liberal norms, cooperation, etc., means that China would have an incentive to integrate into the LAO because the opportunity, the benefit of cooperating is much higher than the opportunity cost.
So what is the affirmative change that leads to an opportunity cost of China wanting to do it?
Well, sure. The Hall-Field evidence says that the key question for the liberal order is whether or not there's sort of liberal migratory governance, and it says that that is the determining factor for whether the LAO goes into a positive or negative direction.
Where is the evidence substantiated that China would care about liberal migration within Japan?
Well, there's an argument about spillover in that Japan taking this liberal step creates more liberal norms and incentive for a signal of cooperation in the first place. As the explanation above indicates, China is not like inherently revisionist or seeks to displace the US order. It is rather opportunistic, and the benefit of cooperating if Japan signals that is beneficial without weight.
In the world of the affirmative, does sort of basis troops get away from Japan?
I think as a result of the without the economic interdependence between Japan and the US would go down. There might be less military cooperation because they would be unable to conduct things like recruitment because of aging. The author has not said that bases might go away, but
it says like bases are absolutely critical.
There's a card that says that part of the reason why Japan is such a critical treaty ally to the US is because of the bases they have in East Asia. The reason why aging undermines the alliance is more so about decreasing economic interdependence and the fact that Japan cannot sustainably force its
independence have like internally towards like bases, troops, and etc.
Well, the argument is that as a result of declining interdependence trade and also the ability for Japan to sustain its military, there's little incentive to maintain the alliance, and that would cause fissures in it.
Okay, cool. The framework, util is resolves infinite regress. Is this just saying that pleasure and pain are the starting point of sort of
it's just saying like whatever you value, if you continue questioning why that ends up being valuable to you, the end result of that sort of line of questioning would be that it feels good, or like if you dislike it.
How can you make judgments about other people's pleasure and pain?
What do you mean?
I.e., how can you tell what is painful for me or pleasurable for me?
Well, there's like truth to the fact that there's subjectiveness in what people like and dislike, but the reason why people like or dislike those variable things is because those terminate in an endpoint of pleasure, or they dislike them because
they terminate in a pleasure, but that seems to be like a little bit circular, or not answer my question about how can we make moral obligations towards others if we do not know what is painful or pleasurable.
Well, because others experience hedonic tones, you know the fact that other people can experience pain and pleasure means that you should care about their sort of philosophy.
Okay, cool. That's start my thank you speech before I set it up. So, first of all, it's gonna be a little bit just like Muzzi was a little bit off the dome. Didn't hope to be here, but did not know this was gonna actually happen. So, first of all, I would like to thank the University of Kentucky, all the TAB staff for hosting such a great TOC. But the first people I would like to thank are my parents and my family. My mom, my dad, always driving me late night tournaments, freshman locals, letting me skip a lot of school for go to debate tournaments, letting me do my thing, not understanding my arguments, and just asking, did you win, did you not? And always being my brother, my number one supporter, doesn't really understand debate, but brags about me to anyone, and I'm like, it's just a local or something like that, but it doesn't matter. Second, are the coaches of Strake Jesuit, specifically starting with the administration, Father Johnson, Mr. Lojo, Mr. Fade for all your support. Strake gets to go to a lot of tournaments. I would not be in the pace to be here if we did not have this support. Secondly, are my coaches, first Mr. Chris for allowing us to have an amazing program, amazing coaches, getting people like Chris and allowing us to travel everywhere and understanding our success and how much we love debate and letting us have a lot of fun. And would be able to go to Universal Studios, Great Wolf Lodge, all those things without Mr. Chris. I just want to shout out Chris. Chris is probably the best coach ever. He's one person running Strake Jesuit. We have had a lot of success lately, and it's just because of Chris. We have good debaters, but nothing without Chris. There is something that is extraordinary about this man. This is the second time he's had a person in TOC finals in like the last 3 years, and it's not just because of us. Chris is something amazing personally to me. He's been an amazing mentor and someone who's made my time at Strake Jesuit on another level. And then finally, to my teammates, your hard work and support made this finals run possible. Specifically, I would like to thank Jet. You've been probably my closest friend on the debate team. We started on debate, and it's been fantastic seeing you. I just love that we've done debate together and we can do so much. Secondly, Justin, you've been probably prep on one of the greatest debaters on the circuit, and you just like turned 16. You're amazing. You're fantastic. Even though like some rounds might not go your way, even though you're definitely everyone considers you can win every tournament. Regardless, you're an amazing friend and fun to be around. Diego, I love you, bro. Amazing. Just funny and having classes even outside debate. We've become a lot closer this senior year. Broughton, you make the team funny as fuck. It's always great to have you in the vans, all your jokes and everything. Nathan, you came out of nowhere as a transfer student, and now you're an amazing debater. A lot of fun. Shout out to Strake PY, that's Philemon, amazing friend. Room 414, that's our hotel room. We sleep together. It's gone crazy. I'm sorry if I've left anyone out. Oh, also like Muzzi said, NSD, coaches, mentors, labs, teammates, etc. My friends across the debate circuit. I know COVID killed everyone, but I've had so much fun debating like such. COVID killed online. COVID killed in-line debate. COVID is pretty bad, but that's what I meant. So it's great to see you all senior year. There's a lot of friends that I met, and the senior year was amazing. And yeah, with that, let me just reply to the email. It will be 2 off in case. It will be the framework and then the advantages topped out.
Pandemic scenarios go crazy.
Oh, also while everyone's waiting, shout out to Strake alumni, especially Sana, Jarvis, all the Strake 22 members. They're amazing. I love them.
Oh, this one also didn't go to Eric's email.
Because Muzzi just forwarded
Oh,
it to me.
Okay, I don't know how to do that.
I can just reply. Oh, let me find.
Just reply all to the forward. Oh, actually,
No, click
No.
reply all, type in email, and then send
Yeah,
it.
that's what I'm doing. I just need to find his email. Just give me a second.
you know I got it. Sorry, my computer's being really slow. The Wi-Fi is not cooperating. Sorry, it's still loading.
What Wi-Fi are you on?
I'm on guest.
Conference. Yeah, I'm on conference.
Oh, okay. Conference works better. Or not, it is boosting better, but there's like a separate login thing I need to do. Oh, okay. Let's see if that worked. Okay, it did. Lovely. Thank you. I'm just downloading and that'll be good. Alright, I'm ready. Sorry about the wait.
Alright, cool.
Interpretation of open borders refers to movement between countries needing Article 22 open borders is not merely upon the relaxation of immigration controls, but ownership of freedom of movement between countries, opposite unconditionality of the right to move between means joint litigation, barriers or no data by common action, joint litigation that means open borders for entering and leaving Cambridge. Disregarding this situation, people can enter and leave a country easily in violation of the Act. Just open Japanese borders is a violation because it's not reciprocal between countries or entering and leaving. They don't open borders for two or more countries. People can enter and do not have unrestricted freedom to leave because they do not have other countries that will openly accept it. That was accepted. Standards one is limits only single country asks one of the top 175 different absence to limited countries inside immigration is coming a justification of regional geopolitical component for really our interpretation allows for regional grouping that allows enough flexibility with the negative preparation B point is grounded each requires a new case next to no regional topic general topic so applies to Germany have not blue topic and by multilateral officer or core topic zero single country have mentioned open borders causes race to the French have issue topic and a sharp division fundamental baseline for debatabilities and community interest reasonable divide charge arbitrary judgment of race for the wrong questionable argumentation no race versus what is equal all theory just substance actually each encourage many since what is equal will be purposely abusive the second off ethics was get off your ace is not getting seriously always tells us what is happening can't tell us what odds happens the same against the question of moral concrete moral X and B is in Carter's paradise able to you can deceive it to be simulation and those other experience makes appears on a basis of the universe that is obviously civil and people say they don't experience the same seas progress and we should always that's why we should follow the route they are but if they don't have a certain point reason solves when we ask why we should follow reason we demand a reason which says a third reason sells the only thing we follow justifies universal laws of morality and principle of the there's no distinction between practical reasons and so here's it came that one plus one equals two just or be magicism justifies duty ages differently not valuing their moral worth that justifies any norm which fails as a guide to action without the state and the state of nature there's nothing conditioned the right will be forced because the problem assures us mercy over arguing that a rule will make the right impossible without such procedure equal freedom is impossible any objection will make the right to use the force against others thus the standard consistency of arguing that a rule actions are ethical super willing does not infringe on the ability of will prefer all other favors laws and all country theory source obligation should be good object presupposes good as a rational will negate one self-determination requires free association include the right to exclude this woman self-determination value steps with the right to not associate with the government adopted who would marry to whom the marriage is best also lies but what if Jack is forever to be married to Joe the citizens will be gaslighted Joe the moral dominion over affairs the second party must be allowed to associate unless you two are willing to associate influence and discretion, rejected association. Immigration forces people to associate political statements are not different from a club, just like how Harvard does not have to accept because some considered our self-determined states can reject others on any basis. That's moment to the first, the freedom of association, and force of important the general relationship, not of conceding the rights of association more valuable in intimate context, not that they do exist elsewhere. Second, there are non-intimate association, religious association, political groups, third, medicine, state of association, all clubs are considered potential members for the congregation of the experience of being a member, the fear of decreased access. Second, all new members will have to say like club is organized, even though citizens will never be the majority of the majority's orders affect the makeup of a economy. Not will changes will for the worst of fellow citizens, all rules and charge the country, no collectively will determine without enjoy the freedom of association. Thus, sovereignty includes the right to free exclude borders that constitute. Third is the constitutional rule requires borders every centralization. It's the South of the Constitution, community bodies of the laws that is settled by drawing boundaries that which are as well civic that will can only send under borders. Those who are full members of the sovereign which distinguished fourth is property rights exist and the law state common ownership does not mean restriction to right to property is not interested to a person with them against a nation. It's impossible to commit right against a citizen. Also, it means the best resolution superarching would not require Kant NC. Is there anything obligation a person thinks of right? Is it private use of anything possession of the common to the others? Right? You do a lot of choice that person cannot be divided by the brave. Someone is all alone. They can never have acquired external things. Their own. There's no relation to fifth perpetual peace. That's about how 12 that permits the principle of reason gives authorization, but the obligation of refrain from using an object of their choice between the person taking them across our public's right to drive from borders is essential perpetual peace. Is never reached each case. The green evidence usual is not impartial, i.e. slave. It would allow for slavery because of the pleasure of the common benefits of the slave owners, genocide, etc. 6 billion versus 6 million. One deontology only. It's not deontology, which doesn't account for socioeconomic conditions, i.e. poor and rich disparities, pain and pleasure, more into the masculine subjection, people like pain and dislike pleasure. There's no way you can make an ethical conclusion about other people, which means if it also guide action, it's not normative. Second is we resolve the public actors, constitutional amendments, constitutions like Germany and the Bill of Rights also prove that public actors is all fallacy. No actor in the plan in of itself the plumber evidence, no circular union with consequences is true. Winning the fair means they were certain also conflates a free fiat and policy distinction. We do not need to be allowed to debate about ethics in the first place. The plan doesn't actually solve distinction in real life. The Asian stuff in politics because we call their dreams of British Republic as considered historically proven false country stared at the path on the road more difficult than imagined. The majority of reverse course analysts advise senators are looking down like the status of running security and reputation damage and economic costs that outweigh potential benefits. Number nuclear reversal grown with the number of states initiated programs as the climate average time to repeat the program is completely 17 years in the hardware laws. There's a base return for example, leaders have to wait until gains and the possibility of weapons of sugar attacked by Aussie power states in relationship with LAG has consolidated power logistics is vulnerable. Its lead 3/7 of energy starts by strong control. The CCP low team with the war support of the motion perception of G surrounded by yes men. However, other sides and less direct some of the proteges and the LAG members are some degree of loyalty. New fascist splits between loyalists and rights of the coming parties be returned to the new leaders would not affect major changes. That is the emotion of full control is created vulnerability and its leaders must deliver the strive towards common prosperity. Alliance with decline reverses legitimacy crisis. Alliance are pursued critical and makers global strategy in order for controlling domestic citizens in Bakar and Buggy 21 China and representative use of the minds of the planners that higher proceeds. Each as the president works with constantly Germany to America's way to maintain a genetic chance and Europe, Asia, the box China, the forward is structuring alliance leadership. All these are wanted to abuse and make it dominant series of structure will use to try to restart out the PRCC Taiwan ECS status vulnerability disputes remain unfavorable. Fear of losing support triggers regional aggression, especially Taiwan war. But 20 was in the Beijing is revisionist and it's over-supplemented. The aggression is the result of weakness and concern with the stability. CCP legitimacy party community drivers of policy. They tore around in floods and creating unrest and response to the escalated aggression. Aggression is the result of strengthening the loss. Leadership of your focus, many express erratic into a face inward 2020. Many of the CCP is obsessed with losing popular support. They use external aggression of the nationals and united conflicts. Vietnamese, Malaysia, Taiwan, India, CCP's made full use of China's foreign ministry policy. China is not afraid of domestic majestic magnitude of conflict. Taiwan product of danger. This conflict will bolster legitimate reunification core. 11 Taiwan's threat steps toward existence. Extinction. Pennies on 22 China and the US can very well go nuclear, fairly harming the regimes of legitimacy. Nuclear weapons may be the most effective means to war fighting risk and escalation for reduced stage for test cycles that brought in conflict. Despite no first use into this Beijing can appoint system will resolve. China is rise is motivated by size leadership advantage. Military 19 China's use the international order connected with century of emulation active party category identity department research and nationalism legitimize the KGB international community's action towards China are to adjust with this and Western Johnny anytime the living Chinese privacy and discrimination led to the emulation of the extent of policies and all international regeneration restores status cut that card restores status to Germany status to the United multiple as in use China conflict only seeing the dominance of Xi's peace lane 21 the potential for conflict sided when the foreign dependent on Washington the US refusing China's Beijing is equal to determine for Chinese rights to go over Beijing for century reinforces security potential flag codes and spark military conflict and said the SES Chinese movement sent conflict and opposing Okom Taiwan the most dangerous place on earth the confrontation escalates into major war on that at major core hard power challenges debt cooperation the behind price economy means a challenging China which calls integration war 17 global belief existing institution and its war direct rights and ally of the American energy about see global and equality and multi-power world is support of an interest perspective growing along with views that China side is observing some unjust obstacles imposed by U.S. government is committed to foreign policy moderation one of the developments confirmed that China faces gas costing increased support for the natives position and factor makes it easier to mobilize into Western opportunity provide opportunities
For Chinese problems that lie, it turns cooperation, popular 19 provisionist interactions, Russia, China, product and insecurity, German, US, and offending, Eco America, organized recognition of the growth power, our identities, Russia adopted interrelations, US was ceased domination, same issue for China, the US as a source of relations, intentions, which helps to provide US German, German, the transnational efforts to deal with existential threats that regulated requires the US pursue cooperation.
Alright.
Marked up, I can say.
I can take it. I think I flowed everything, but I can't
Okay.
merge. Okay, are you good for CX?
Yeah.
Okay. Topicality, plan says open borders. Other than the plan, what is the basis for validating topicality violations?
I'm confused, like, other than the plan text, I think the affirmative should be contextual to the sort of solemnity advocate, the plan, the mechanism,
What's
the
a solemnity
advantages.
advocate defined as?
A solemnity advocate is someone who advocates for the plan.
So like, which part of the advocate count as a solemnity advocate?
I'm confused why we have to oppose the onus of for you to prove that you're solemnity advocate. Second of all, I think plain text in a vacuum is
Okay,
a bad
I want to
model
talk about these.
because it should be contextualized
The
to how the
definition
affirmative
cards.
orients with other negative
Your
positions.
evidence is like open borders means that people must be able to enter and leave. Post plan, people can enter Japan, and after they enter, they can leave if they want
I
to. What is the violation?
I accepted this. The one he said that you cannot leave to other countries because there is no other countries of Japanese people or people that are
What
open
card
towards
do you have
Japan.
that says that every other country must have open borders from Japan?
That is not what the 1 card has to prove, like, especially with Japan, but it does says that there's unrestricted freedom of movement between countries. I think between is pretty good about saying jointly engaging, which means it's this freedom of movement that is unrestricted between countries. It means both countries on the reciprocal ends have to be
I want to talk about the Kant
engaging.
NC. I guess the contention, self-determination means the right to exclude. Does that mean, like, for example, is travel ban like Trump's? Is it good?
Is Trump's travel ban good?
With the is that justified in the framework?
I think there's always like a hindrance argument, i.e., if it justifies moral, racial, like sort of morally important conclusions, that does not mean that sort of every form of exclusion is good. The right to exclude is about sort of infringing on your personal right to associate with someone, not sort of that just because you are going to discriminate on someone that you have not associated with because they're a Muslim or another race.
The case I want to talk about, I guess, the alliances turn / the legitimacy turn. Which person in the Chinese Communist Party poses a legitimate political threat to Xi?
If you want me to name like a one person, I think it talks about like Wu Zhenlong, Li Chang, and other people. But I think the thesis of Xi's legitimacy.
He staffed the Politburo with people like
I think that is
his childhood friends. How is anyone going to challenge?
I think our cards respond to that, and the Xi legitimacy is pretty contextual as why he has to take accountability for everything. Second is that Xi's sort of political factions are right now, which means there are opportunistic sort of factions that want to take advantage.
Why is U.S.-Japan alliance key?
The Monomarker and Bogaki evidence talks about sort of why Asian sort of leadership alliances, especially over things, are key to resolve things in East Asia.
I want to talk about the status denial turn. The AF is not hard power good, but rather LIO integration good. What's the link to the impact turn?
The link is sort of the award evidence contextualizes this that natives will reject participation in the LIO over.
Why does China not want to integrate into the LIO?
Because of nativists within China who would completely oppose it.
Why
which
do they hold
means
those
Xi has to be
votes?
accountable to those.
Okay. That is fine. The prolif card, this is not about Japan, right? It's just like generally about cascades?
Yeah, it talks about like any form of proliferation in history. It's just impossible to take.
Okay, I'm gonna start with them. I have 243. Order is the case, starting on the advantage top down, then the framework, topicality, and then the Kant NC. There's a doc, so I'll send it out.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, case like the advantage 1, advantage 2, the framework stuff / util, topicality, and then Kant. And let me send out the doc.
Can you make sure I'm on it before?
I will try my best.
Appreciate it.
Alright, is anyone not good? Alright. They cannot go for an impact ship. They've dropped 2 terminals. First, Japan prolific causes quick war in East Asia. Their evidence is about cascades broadly. Japan causes unique war because they've dropped that Korea, China, etc. would perceive that they're going berserk and immediately launch force aggression. Also dropped that it lacks secure second strikes because they have an incentive to go forcing crisis. Also dropped the probing impact off of the odds. Undermines its credibility in every theater. South causes Middle East, etc. All drop China, Russia, Iran, etc. All go to war. The turn G's politically immortal Buckley. Turkish from the dominance of the way. Let's Japan is our influence. Japan is our Persian rebels. Social is that raised the body control of Congress. She's controlling less much area of action. She's committee me support for policies. After she consolidates the opposite power grounding proteges, other alliances stop EU, Taiwan, etc. No reason. US, Japan is key. No Taiwan or Russia. Beijing has reason to interest in the challenges. Growth of the concept of trading bodies, because aging, crisis, cost of war, semi-cost, other China, produces global Russia, alliances, offer energy, China. The CCP as willing to second advantage, building diplomacy, bad arguments that Japan promotes global migratory governance, which is key to global integration, cooperation. This results in compellence, not coercion, and generates international buy-in, solves the downsides of the LAO while maximizing its potential to solve global problems. It's all Japan makes the LAO stable. Pursuit of an LAO is inevitable. It's only a question of making it effective, so none of their offenses uniqueness. The cooperative liberal order is good, solves warming, disease, national aggression, poverty, bioweapons, and super AI, each cause extinction, drop the negative defense to all of them. Transition is worse, requires a hostile takeover of the international system that doesn't successfully incorporate. Only incorporation tells the living of existential risk that causes SOA competition and nuclear war status denials not mutually exclusive with their argument because they've been denied by status by the US order now, but reasserting liberal norms allows Japan to keep the weather of the weather is a shock of the volatility, which allows the US to retrench safely. That stable LAO solves China because they're opportunistic, not aggressive. A stable order raises the value of peace and cooperation, which causes integration. The other advantage turns it decline, causes probing and all major hotspots drop. Integration turns China good. Stable LAO creates conditions for peaceful adoption and status validation. It's not zero sum. They're opportunistic, not revanchist. With the stability is key to peaceful assimilation of the China into the liberal order, which solves their offenses with multiple 1EC cards. Pursuit inevitable defenders will never back down and will go down with the fight. The util page usually the only coherent moral theory. Ask yourself why rationality, freedom, etc. matters. If you continue questioning the reason is not for some actor tyrant good, but rather because those things to intermediate and pleasurable and states which is the util. So only coherent weight value impacts util does not result in slavery because there's a massive amounts of negative harm for people would outweigh the minor economic benefits. Masochistic exceptions not relevant to minor portion of the population. Util is egalitarian. Assumes everyone has the capacity to feel pleasure. It is not gap. Conceded it's not relevant. Conceded governments are not relevant, so they can't go for this. As a reason, their thing is true. Topicality between immigration between Japan and other countries has happened as a result of the plan. RNA's only says that borders can be internal states and web systems. They must jointly engage, which is migrants coming from one state to Japan, and Cambridge says that they must be able to enter and leave easily, which we mean because anyone can enter or leave Japan. Plastics, in fact, is the only non-arbitrary way to violate topicality violations. Anything else justifies reading random violations to solve advocates, which are undefined tags, etc. It says open borders counter-interpretation. Only one state has to open it. Look, extension, but open borders means that there are all the residents can be open systems, separation of others, random also there's random markets are. What does it have? This is only over here in our country, because all the stores and one is open to anyone. Anyone prefer clarity comes first. Their terms are any coherent dictionary definitions. Only ours is has an intention to find. 1 over eliminating makes every alpha brother's choice after innovation. 2 picks and makes it convenience. The affirmative wins are better. As small as because the functional limits of no app can get a deficit to a single state. Exceptions only by classes not states. So country picks kill the F3 shift cuts a pivot from single states to bilateral opposites between states. So it's worse for ground because they lose range rate populism and fortune globally in favor of China. Asked about single areas of visibility only of a negative debate impossible. Kant NC no is gathered warrant for a difference between moral and natural facts. Explanation on the other page proves that util is the only pleasure and pain. The only reason we hear about moral facts or discarded paradox, it's much more likely that we're actually in the real world. They've read no evidence for this, and our claim is much less controversial than theirs. It solves regress other page. And also, our framework is also equal because universally people care about pain and pleasure. We don't treat people different. It's egalitarian because we assume everyone has pleasurable end states. We don't care about the intrinsic value of an object or rather the pleasure. It constantly which shows their arguments. Distinction is a contradiction under Kant, which always are often a willing distinction. Simultaneously breaks the concept of extinction to show when we left or will it be willing the end of life to fulfill duty to improve life is teleology because there's no left to be improved. See, influencing to will extinction destroys the ability to be free itself. No one to force that distinction if our views can see a consequence and it becomes part of my deliberation which racing issues which my action no action which distinction of the capability to prevent someone from dying but I choose not to actually be held morally culpable. Let me see if I can find it. Immigration restrictions are back the question about like the fundamental equality of persons turns are often and also answers to citizen, non-citizen distinction, whole evidence distinction, not made through laws, like other things, true. Exclude the non-members of the distinction, rights, distinction, about to be situation, which is toleration. Exclude all racial distinction, whole rights, distinction, habits, things, and matter for granted, this analysis and access. No special second argument, kind of rights, heretical, political, as a kind of citizens say that rolling was a contributor to outside analysis, have no or not necessarily surely. Yeah, but if it doesn't say that because they're unsaid, others are unable because they're outside the fact that they have not made a contribution to the argument morally because what it takes is the right to make a contribution. I'll send. Actually, that's just one card at Mark. It's just full evidence at what is at stake is the right to make a contribution. Brett.
All right, you start. Kant NC. Oh, there is
Sorry, what sheet is that?
the second off,
Okay.
and then the 1AC framework. I just sent something in the body of the emails, because it's just one thing.
Okay, I got it.
I also got it.
Alright. Fantastic.
Wait 1 sec. Okay, no.
Sorry, what is it?
Nothing.
I'm just gonna wait for them to close the door.
You said Kant and then the framework. Okay, cool.
Alright. Our interpretation of an ethical world is that we must center ethical actions around a priori truths, not empirical worlds, and conceded the rigorous argument that any reason why we should follow a theory, i.e. utilitarianism, ethical theories are not binding because they do not have a starting point. Practical reason resolves the rigorous question, which is the only one in our framework where they have gone for. So if rigorous is the starting point of ethics that the one here has gone for, I have to do is put defense of their pain and pleasure is binding, but they've conceded that reason resolves it because any reason we follow, reason demands a reason, we concedes to the authority of reason of itself. So it's the only thing we can follow, which is justifies universal laws of morality, because we are all agents, conceived of the agents that value each other ourselves. There's no distinction between us as practical researchers. They conceded that we are all researchers. It's here to claim just one is equal to you, just for me. But this framing issues, they conceded particularism justifies treating agents differently and not valuing the moral rule. That outweighs a value to freedom, a value to moral life. It eternally outweighs a risk of extinction, a risk of life, because we've completed that there's an infinite sum of freedom that is violated when you just don't justify treating agents differently. They have conceded that any form of utilitarianism justifies any norm which fails to action. Oh, your answers. This preempted the one here is utilitarian. Egalitarian. You should not let them go to one ear or two ear or spin because they've conceded one is the index. It's not a question that you will always agree that pain is good, pleasure is good, and pain is bad, but they cannot tell it for each individual person. Second of all, accentuations of every single policy of that extinction outweighs the nuclear war, outweighs climate change. There's always deaths on both sides, but you cannot make sudden one concrete universal war. Death will never always be bad. Murder will never always be bad under utilitarianism because there's always a framing exceptional circumstances where it can be justified, but our framework does not allow it. But the framing issue in this debate is a concession of the omnilaw rule. The Ripstein evidence is quite good. Without the state and in this nature of nature, there's nothing that can enforce the rights of nature in the first themselves, which is internal link to every form of infinite rights violation, which outweighs under any form of epistemic claims or anything, because right violations are infinite, but there's no total subject in extinction, which outweighs for all future generations, which means the standard is consistency with omnilaw rule. Ethicals or actions are ethical, so for willing it does not infringe on the ability to will the framework. Is he also conceded an independent reason to prefer the Kant framework? All other frameworks can have, i.e. the non-Kantian theories, i.e. like utilitarian source obligations and intrinsically good objects preserving pain and pleasure, but that presumes the goodness of the rational will to evaluate pain and pleasure, i.e. can we do have the rational capacity to make actions that are painful or pleasurable, or can we act or interpret those arguments, which is a framing issue on the framework debate, which means I'll do the line right here. No active mission distinction. Yes, active mission distinction. There's infinite culpability. Just because I know people are impoverished in India does not mean that I will always be able to help them, because otherwise it means infinite culpability, which is bad because agents can never be ethical. Their models, they cannot stand up to two or say infinite resources for states or the things like that. They conceded in the one year that states do not matter, which was their answer to act respect, which means they cannot answer those claims. And the warrant for no AD was so flipping quick, and then fast Muzzi is good at 2 years, but you should hold him to the one. The extinction is a contradiction under Kant. This is just a bad mischaracterization of what util versus Kant does mean. The Kant NC does not mean that we are intending to kill someone, because if I win that there's no inter-mortem distinction or that sort of pain and pleasure are incalculable, then we cannot use utilitarianism coherently. We are not willing extinction because the value to life or freedom infinitely outweighs. It is a perfect duty under a framework, because we have to respect humanity, autonomy, and freedom of agents, which means all the A, B, and C points are just reasons why willing extinction is bad. But if I just prove that there is no way to willing extinction, it frames the argument. Second is, there are all consequential arguments that depend on the consequences of the affirmative comment, but they have not one reason why we should use consequentials. They've only the one year is not one offensive reasons why util is good, consequential is good. They've just one that util is egalitarian, it is not racist, and it is pain and pleasure are equitable. It does not drive normative moral theory.
theories, which is what you're voting TOC finals on the limelight. They say the limelight. Their only other response to Regress was other page. We do not have to say respond to this guardians or is all caps will respond to pain and pleasure on the 1AC framework flow. They say util is universal. I've already answered that. Now the Cole evidence. The framing issue on this base conceded the omniatal rule, which means our Benhamia evidence, evidence terminally outweighs. They've conceded their property. They've conceded the constitution of the omniatal rule inherently requires borders, which means opening those borders means that you are not defining the state, not respecting the state and its jurisdiction, which means you cannot distinguish between members of the sovereign body. They've not made a one-year response to this, which is a bad, which means even if it's bad argument, it's terminally outweighs. Also, you see the woman evidence of freedom of association. We do have the right to exclude. The governments cannot tell you who to include and who to exclude. You have the right to associate and not do anything, which means the public authorities do not have the ability to say what private authorities. The Cole evidence, it is wrong. It claims that restrictions are logical, not that it needs proactive reason to do the affirmative. The last hand of the card is criticizing the location as war, not saying open borders are good. It criticizes priority and economic prosperity. There's not self-determination. What is one? The one is you see equality does not necessarily open borders. Universal rights are worse or rights violations. Display 12. Picture should be bleak shows access to best government ability. Each imagine once someone who moved out of your neighbor. Why is a violation of equal concern and respect? Equality does not demand everyone has the same rights. For example, no right to French relations. That was not more than instead of implication. Coal-minded reply to examples. Atypical close. Confusing three different ways of defending immigration rights. Rights responding to poverty is not universal right. Your makers have the right to go to Cuba, purchase land involved. Particular rights whereby some people have some rights across borders. Go back to intent foresight distinction. Just flag it. It is impossible to know 4Z intents because I can intend to drop my pen on the floor, but just because it causes an earthquake 10 years later, it's a possible prediction and probability to filter your actions. Don't let the winner say it up. It's just our advantage. No, this is a debate about ethics, which means what ethics should be used to evaluate normative people. They've conceded states do not matter. That was explicitly in the 1A, which means it's about individual people and culpability, which means individual people do not have the foresight to see case. Using was morally explained in a bunch of defensive reasons. They do not have a normative reason why their theory can guide moral actions. They've just conceded it is not universal. The master's objection is true. I think some people like pain or dislike pleasure, which means, or people have different concepts of pain and different concepts of pleasure, which means it's non-unifiable to make moral concepts of what we do is pleasurable, what we do is painful, which means none of these arguments happen, which means if you have pleasurable end states, yes, sure, that is a 1A, but what constitutes pleasurable end states? A lack of explanation for the two on this means that it is not happening, which means this debate comes down to whether we have an ethical theory that sorts normative obligations. They've conceded not an offensive reason why util proves normative obligations. They've conceded a bunch of 1C preempts that resolve those obligations. Our offense outweighs the culture and is bad and mischaracterized. You're voting negative on Kant.
Okay. I should turn it out. 242. The order is just the Kant NC. Alright, is everyone good? Alright. The tuner was incredibly light on the characterization of what Kant means or what counts as a moral obligation on Kant. I'm going to make this incredibly clear. Extinction is the largest impact under a Kantian framework, even if you conclude that consequences of our actions are irrelevant. I'm going to extend two arguments at the top that should frame impact calculus between our contention arguments and their contention arguments. First, there's no distinction between me acting and admitting to act. For example, if I have the ability to save a dying child, but I choose not to, I'm culpable for doing so because I had the ability to prevent that child from dying, but I chose not to. Their argument about infinite obligations is incorrect. You're only held culpable for the next best thing you could do, even if it would be theoretically good for me to help dying people in China. I don't have the capability to do so, so there's not an infinite amount of consequences that I'm culpable for because I'm only culpable for what is the next best thing that is in my capability. Secondly, there's no distinction between the intent of an action and the foresight of an action. For example, if I know that if I threw my phone at Nick, it would hurt his fingers, I should be held culpable for doing that because I know it would hurt. There are arguments about predictions being impossible or incorrect. First, even if it is generally difficult to make predictions, you know it is true in the case of the app because they've dropped our scenarios. You know the app certainly solves extinction from adversaries, which means that even if it is generally difficult to predict consequences, it is not in the case of the app. And this argument just proves that it is hard to calculate, not impossible. We can use reasonable predictions. Now, winning the above means that voting negative, you cannot vote negative, even though you cannot vote negative because you know that there's an existential nuclear war that you should be held culpable for causing under a Kantian framework because you are held culpable for you knew that if you vote negative, you would cause an existential event and you had the capability to prevent it by voting affirmative, which means that existential risks are a morally relevant consequence under Kant. Even if I win all the other reasons why consequentialism fails in the abstract, I'm making an argument that there's a moral duty to vote affirmative under a non-consequentialist framework because intending extinction is irrational under Kant. Our argument is not that extinction is bad because it kills people, but rather it is inconsistent with Kant's moral framework. The tuner did not explain what Kant says, what Kant thinks is valuable, etc. So you should err to true error characterizations. Kant says that because we're all rational agents and we have the ability to think, we should be able to only take actions that can be universally pursued because anything else would be irrational and contradictory and not in line with a rational agency to be able to think and calculate. It is irrational to allow for extinction to happen because if two arguments first, you would employ our ability to be free and rational to end our freedom and rationality because you'd will the end of life on earth, which is contradictory because you employ the idea of freedom and the ability to have rationality to end those concepts in the first place, which is logically contradictory under the framework B. Kant also says that you have to have universal norms because those are the only ones that are rationally reasonable. When universalizing extinction and willing every person at the same time willing extinction would happen is not universalizable because everyone would be dead, which means that there's no one to will extinction in the first place, so it is logically contradictory at Kant. This gets around most of their index of utilitarianism because our argument isn't about consequences or the fact that death is bad, but rather the largest freedom violation under Kant is the cause of extinction itself because it forecloses all of our freedom and forecloses all of our rational agency and is internally contradictory. The tuner was very light on their explanation of their contention arguments. You know that extinction would foreclose all of our future rational agency, it would foreclose all of our future freedom, etc., which means that it is the largest rights violation under their framework, even if they're right under all of their counter arguments. So you should vote off to prevent an existential risk.